Very in-depth bail application, I'd say. You seem to have covered all grounds rather well. The one thing I would suggest, and this is probably purely and utterly because you haven't had much, in fact, I'm correct in saying that this is your first practice at the bail app, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. One thing I would say, and this is purely and utterly through sort of a lack of practice and a lack of knowledge how to do it, is not to sort of constantly read off your sheet. Okay, when you're in a court environment, especially with something like a a bail app, sorry, where the information is not an extortionate amount of information, it's quite short, and they, as you've seen, they only take several minutes to do. It should be something that is just flowing off the top of your head like this. Most counsel and most people applying for bail apps, especially in sort of lower-ended cases, will have only really got the information or the bail app perhaps 15 minutes before it's actually due to take place. So they'll know that off the top of their head. But it's a skill that they've learnt through doing it several times and training and stuff. So don't feel disheartened about that. The other thing I'd say is that you were talking rather quickly. Sometimes it was a bit difficult. I'm fortunate that I do know the case, that I'm aware of the facts of the matter, but I'd suggest just slowing it down a little bit. Okay. I personally, I'm a fan of the approach that you took, where you weren't stood up rigidly. Too often I see students in my capacity as a judge on moots and stuff like that, stood up there very, very rigid and very wooden. You took a bit more of a relaxed approach. I saw your hand on the table, and it didn't bother me that much. It may bother other judges. It didn't bother me because at the end of the day, I'm not giving your hand the bail. I'm giving what you're saying attention. Okay, so because it was relaxed, you kind of gave off an air of I know what I'm talking about here. Listen to what I'm saying, rather than stood up there looking nervous. I'm assuming you were quite nervous at the best of the time. You know, you'd be a fool not to be. Yeah, and so I think you did a really cracking job for your first time around there. So I'm going to congratulate you on that. What's your thoughts, feedback? How do you think it went? Anything you think you could improve on?
I think I felt a bit nervous.
Yeah.
And I got stuck on some parts.
But I think that's just because of your nerves, and it wasn't anything major. I think there was one time I picked up where you were trying to say her name, but I think another word had come out or something like that. But you'd realised that and you'd corrected it quite quickly, okay? One of the other things I would suggest is that while I'm talking, not to interrupt me, okay? Yeah, you did that once or twice. Your questioning, I was really quite impressed with your questioning, actually, because you seem to have an answer with regards to whether or not I should impose a curfew on Miss Higgins and send her to a drug rehabilitation program. And the answer that really impressed me the most was your answer to what active steps is she taking to seek employment. And so massive kudos to you for that, because I think you did really, really well. So you dealt with the curveballs, you dealt with the questioning really well. I actually think it was probably your strongest point there. Okay? Fantastic, Mr. Sharp.